Throughout the centuries, humanity has grappled with fundamental questions. Who am I? What is the nature of love, beauty, and truth? How should we live? From the marble halls of ancient Athens to the digital corridors of the modern world, few figures stand as enduring and influential as Plato, a philosopher whose penetrating insights continue to illuminate the perplexities of human existence. Think like Plato. Ancient Lessons for Modern Minds is a journey across time and thought, designed to bridge the wisdom of antiquity with the challenges and complexities of our contemporary age. Plato's ideas are neither relics nor mere intellectual curiosities. Rather, they form the foundation of Western philosophy and continue to resonate deeply in the moral, ethical, and intellectual fabric of society. In this book, we will explore 8 pivotal dimensions of Platonic philosophy, each originating in Plato's dialogues, yet transcending their historical context to engage with the perennial concerns of every generation. In the opening chapter, we turn inward, confronting the age-old injunction to know thyself and examining the transformative power of self-reflection. Next, we ascend from the earthly to the divine through Plato's meditations on love and beauty, discovering how these ideals shape our aspirations and relationships. The third chapter invokes the formative partnership between teacher and student, as Plato himself learned at the feet of Socrates, a model for philosophical inquiry that reverberates in classrooms and conversations today. Chapter 1: The Quest for Truth, Plato's Lifelong Mission. Plato's philosophical journey began amidst the intellectual ferment of ancient Greece, where thinkers strove to unearth the principles underlying existence. The son of an aristocratic Athenian family, Plato's privileged position granted him access to the finest scholars and the most vibrant debates of his era. Yet it was his encounter with Socrates that irrevocably altered his intellectual trajectory, infusing his life with the pursuit of truth, a mission that would define his philosophy. Throughout his dialogues, Plato reveals a relentless commitment to probing reality, refusing to accept the readily apparent or the widely accepted without rigorous scrutiny. The Socratic method, which he inherited and refined, embodies this spirit, a process of dialectical questioning wherein interlocutors are led to confront their assumptions, untangle contradictions, and edge ever closer to the essence of truth. For Plato, truth was not simply the correspondence of belief with fact, but an ideal, absolute, immutable, and accessible only through reason and contemplation. In the context of Athens, a city famed for democratic debate, yet marred by political unrest, Plato's quest for truth was both radical and necessary. He observed that the popular tendencies toward sophistry, rhetorical manipulation, and superficial consensus endangered the soul of the city. Truth, in Plato's eyes, needed safeguarding from the distortions of opinion, prejudice, and self-interest. Plato's dialogues often dramatize the challenges inherent to this mission. In the Apology, he casts Socrates as a gadfly, stinging the complacent and urging them to awaken from intellectual slumber. In the Republic, truth is depicted as the light that guides one out of the darkness, the allegorical cave in which humanity languishes, shackled by illusion. For Plato, the philosopher's primary function is to pursue truth with courage and perseverance, undeterred by popular resistance or personal risk. The lifelong nature of Plato's quest emerges vividly in his later works. Despite his early optimism, he grew increasingly aware of the difficulties in achieving lasting insight and societal harmony. Still, his commitment did not falter. He established the Academy in Athens, one of the earliest institutions dedicated explicitly to philosophical inquiry and the cultivation of intellectual virtue. Through teaching and mentoring, Plato endeavored to perpetuate an unending dialogue between seekers of truth. In the modern world, Plato's quest assumes renewed urgency. The proliferation of media, rapid dissemination of information, and the rise of post-truth politics challenge our ability to discern and uphold the truth. Plato's insistence on rational inquiry, critical reflection, and ethical responsibility provides enduring guidance. His model sets a standard for intellectual integrity and fortitude, encouraging us to persist in the struggle for truth even when faced with adversity or uncertainty. At its core, Plato's philosophy intimates that the pursuit of truth is not a solitary enterprise, but a communal endeavor requiring openness, humility, and the willingness to be transformed. Through detailed exploration of his dialogues, we perceive that truth-seeking is inseparable from the cultivation of virtues: courage to question, wisdom to discern, and justice to act in accordance with insight. As we embark on the journey through Plato's teachings, we grasp that the quest for truth is a process, unceasing, demanding, and profoundly rewarding. It connects us with the deepest aspects of our own nature and binds us to the greater good. To think like Plato is to embrace this quest, cultivating a mind attuned not only to what is, but to what could be, through the relentless pursuit of knowledge and self-improvement. Chapter 2. The Cave Within: Escaping Illusion and Ignorance. Within the annals of philosophical literature, few metaphors resonate as powerfully as Plato's Allegory of the Cave, found in Book 7 of the Republic. In this narrative, Plato describes humans as prisoners bound within a shadowy subterranean chamber, their sight confined to the flickering images cast upon the wall by objects passing before a fire. The prisoners mistake these shadows for reality, unaware of the richer world lying beyond their immediate experience. The Allegory of the Cave masterfully encapsulates Plato's conception of ignorance, not as mere lack of knowledge, but as captivity within flawed perceptions and unquestioned assumptions. The cave represents the limitations of sense experience and cultural indoctrination, in which individuals become habituated to partial truths and engineered illusions. Escaping this psychological cave is not a matter of physical liberation, but of intellectual awakening, a difficult and sometimes disorienting journey requiring courage, guidance, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Plato insists that most people, content with the shadows of the cave, resist the arduous ascent toward knowledge. The process of enlightenment, as he vividly portrays, is gradual and often met with opposition. When the liberated prisoner returns to tell others of the world outside, he is met with disbelief and even hostility. This dynamic mirrors the challenge faced by philosophers and innovators throughout history. Those who seek to reveal deeper truths must navigate skepticism, defensiveness, and occasional persecution. The cave's imagery persists with striking relevance in modern society. Today, the shadows cast on the cave wall may be produced by digital media, societal dogma, or the selective narratives of power. People are often ensnared by echo chambers, where only certain ideas are allowed to flourish, and perception is shaped more by familiar biases than by open inquiry. Plato's allegory warns that comfort with the familiar can become a prison, obscuring the richness and diversity of experience that lies beyond. Escaping illusion, as Plato prescribes, entails the cultivation of reason, a systematic process of questioning, reflection, and discernment. The transition from darkness into light symbolizes the philosopher's ascent from mere opinion to true knowledge, achieved through education and critical dialogue. It is a deeply transformative process, marked by the rejection of passive acceptance in favor of active engagement with reality. Crucially, Plato contends that education must be more than the transfer of information. It is the art of reorienting the soul, of turning one's vision from the superficial towards the profound. The educator is not merely a transmitter of facts, but a guide, and the pupil, not a passive recipient, but an active seeker. The allegory thus serves as both a caution and an aspiration, a reminder of the perils of remaining in intellectual darkness and the promise of awakening through philosophical reflection. For contemporary thinkers, the cave within is a deeply personal phenomenon. It consists of inherited beliefs, unexamined biases, and the psychological barriers that forestall growth. Plato's exhortation is clear. To think like Plato is to embark on the journey out of the cave, to challenge our own limitations, and to persistently seek enlightenment. This process demands humility, the admission of ignorance, as well as the resilience to withstand the discomfort that accompanies revelation. Ultimately, Plato's allegory is both universal and urgent. The quest to escape illusion and ignorance is not a one-time achievement, but a continual effort, sustained through dialogue, self-examination, and the pursuit of wisdom. By recognizing the shadows that shape our understanding and striving to perceive the forms that cast them, we engage in the highest calling of philosophy, the liberation of the mind from the fetters of illusion toward the light of truth. Chapter 3, The Philosopher's Path. How to think, not what to think. Philosophy, in Plato's vision, is not a dogma to be memorized, but a method to be practiced. The distinction between how to think and what to think defines the very essence of the philosopher's path, a journey that emphasizes the cultivation of reason, the mastery of reflection, and the relentless pursuit of wisdom. Plato's educational philosophy was born from his intimate association with Socrates, whose dialectical method privileged questions over answers. The young Plato learned that intellectual authority does not lie in the propagation of fixed beliefs, but in the careful navigation of inquiry. To truly think, one must become adept at examining premises, discerning contradictions, and suspending judgment until evidence is sifted and reason is satisfied. This method finds expression in the enduring dialogues that animate Plato's corpus. Characters are rarely presented as mere mouthpieces for predetermined teachings. Instead, they engage in rigorous examination, challenging and refining each other's positions. The goal is not consensus, but clarity, a deeper understanding forged through tested argument and open-minded scrutiny. For Plato, thinking is inseparable from the cultivation of virtues. Intellectual humility, for instance, is the willingness to recognize the limits of one's knowledge and to remain open to correction. Courage, too, is required to risk discomfort and unsettlement in pursuit of greater truths. The philosopher's path is an ongoing struggle, not only against external error, but against the internal allure of certainty and complacency. The process of philosophical thought, according to Plato, is inherently transformative. It does not merely rearrange beliefs, but restructures the entire soul. By teaching how to think, philosophy equips individuals with tools to navigate uncertainty, resist manipulation, and make judicious decisions. This approach is fundamentally empowering. It encourages autonomy, responsibility, and self-mastery. In contemporary contexts, Plato's emphasis on how to think is of paramount importance. The modern world is saturated with opinions and agendas, and it is tempting to gravitate towards comfortable dogmas or charismatic authorities. Yet Plato's lesson is unwavering. True wisdom demands independent inquiry, vigilant skepticism, and an unflagging dedication to reason. The philosopher's path is also communal. Plato founded the academy not as a solitary retreat, but as a vibrant community of seekers engaged in collaborative exploration. Dialogue, debate, and constructive criticism were central to learning. This model repudiates the notion of the philosopher as an isolated genius, affirming instead that thinking flourishes through collective engagement. Thinking, then, is not an abstract exercise, but a lived vocation. It permeates every aspect of life, shaping how we relate to others, interpret the world, and orient ourselves toward the future. In cultivating the art of thinking, we train ourselves to look beyond the immediate and the superficial, to question, to analyze, and to act with deliberate wisdom. To walk the philosopher's path is to accept that certainty is rare and growth is endemic to the journey. As we adopt Plato's methods, we commit ourselves to an enterprise both demanding and exhilarating, the ceaseless refinement of our judgment, the steady expansion of our understanding, and the lifelong pursuit of insight. Thinking like Plato is thus not a fixed achievement, but a way of being, a dynamic engagement with truth that transforms both the thinker and the world. Chapter 4. The Power of Dialogue. Learning through questioning. Dialogue occupies a central role in Plato's philosophical system, embodying the method through which wisdom is discovered, refined, and communicated. The Socratic dialogues are more than literary forms. They are philosophical exercises, demonstrating that knowledge grows through question, response, and the mutual testing of ideas. Plato witnessed firsthand the power of Socrates' engagement. Unlike the orators and sophists who filled the Athenian agora with persuasive speeches, Socrates majored in sustained conversation, where each claim was scrutinized and each assumption unpacked. In adopting this method, Plato transformed the practice of philosophy into an art of collaborative inquiry, a dynamic process of seeking and illuminating truth. At its heart, dialogue is a vehicle for humility. As interlocutors exchange ideas, they recognize the limits of their understanding and the potential value in alternative perspectives. Plato's dialogues regularly depict participants correcting themselves, revising their views, and discovering unforeseen complexities. This iterative process challenges the notion of static wisdom, affirming instead that genuine learning is marked by adaptability and openness. Questioning, rather than teaching, defines Plato's educational philosophy. The recourse to pointed inquiry, whether through elenchus or maiutics, is designed to draw out the truth within, enabling learners to recognize their own errors and articulate their insights. The teacher's role, as Socrates embodies, is less to instruct than to guide, less to answer than to provoke thoughtful consideration. The power of dialogue also lies in its ability to connect. Amidst disagreement or ambiguity, conversation fosters empathy, respect, and mutual understanding. Such social virtues are essential for the cohesion of any community and for the peaceful resolution of conflict. Plato's insistence on dialogue as the foundation of learning thus has profound ethical and political implications, which remain salient in modern pluralistic societies. In contemporary education, the legacy of Plato's dialogical method can be seen in the Socratic seminar, debate clubs, and collaborative learning environments. These practices recognize that wisdom is not a commodity to be dispensed, but a process to be pursued collectively. They foster critical thinking, curiosity, and the valuable skill of reasoning through complexity. However, the art of dialogue is threatened by the rise of polarized media, entrenched partisanship, and digital communication that favors brevity over depth. Plato's model reminds us that genuine dialogue demands patience, respect, and a shared commitment to truth. It rejects rhetorical victories and instead cultivates lasting understanding through sustained engagement. By learning through questioning, we embrace a philosophy of continual growth. Each conversation becomes an opportunity to sharpen our intellect, examine our beliefs, and approach truth from new angles. Thinking like Plato, in this regard, is the cultivation of a lifelong habit, the pursuit of wisdom through dialogue, the readiness to learn from others, and the faith that truth is attainable through collaborative inquiry. The enduring power of dialogue lies in its capacity to renew our minds, fortify our relationships, and build a society committed to reason, respect, and righteousness. In the world beset by division, Plato's lesson remains clear. Only through dialogue can we hope to understand, to heal, and to flourish. Chapter 5. The Realm of Ideas, Seeing Beyond the Physical World. Plato's metaphysics, centered on the realm of ideas or forms, stands as one of the most influential contributions to Western thought. According to Plato, the world perceived through the senses is only a shadowy imitation of a higher, non-material reality. The forms, perfect, immutable, and suprasensible, constitute the true essence of all things. Understanding this realm is the philosopher's highest aspiration. In the theory of forms, Plato posits that entities such as justice, beauty, or equality exist independently of their imperfect manifestations in the physical world. These forms are accessible not through empirical investigation, but through rational insight and intellectual recollection. The sensible world, rich with diversity and change, tempts us to mistake appearance for reality. The philosopher, however, learns to discern the permanent amid the transient. The allegory of the cave epitomizes this distinction. The shadows on the cave wall symbolize mere reflections of the forms, while the ascent to the surface represents the soul's journey toward genuine understanding. The philosopher's task in Plato's vision is to transcend the world of becoming and to contemplate the world of being. Plato's conception of the realm of ideas carries profound significance for the modern mind. In an age dominated by materialism, utilitarianism, and relentless focus on measurable outcomes, the notion that higher truths exist, unobservable but real, fosters imagination, creativity, and moral aspiration. It challenges us to look beyond the exterior, to focus on what endures: justice, goodness, and beauty. This metaphysical framework has shaped countless disciplines, from mathematics and logic to ethics and aesthetics. The belief in abstract universals fuels the pursuit of knowledge and progress, inspiring generations of thinkers to unravel the mysteries underlying experience. Plane geometry, for instance, rests on the reality of ideal forms. Even though no perfectly straight line exists in nature, to see beyond the physical world is to acknowledge the limits of sense perception and to value the insights of reason. Plato counsels us to seek the truth that animates phenomena, to move from opinion, doxa, to knowledge, episteme. This transition requires discipline, training the mind to reflect, to analyze, and to imagine. The modern thinker benefits from Plato's metaphysics not by retreating from empirical inquiry, but by grounding investigation in deep principles. Intellectual curiosity, moral idealism, and visionary creativity all find their source in the belief that reality is richer and deeper than immediate appearances. To think like Plato is to embrace the invisible dimensions of existence and to aspire toward the ideals that shape and inspire the world. In this light, the realm of ideas becomes a source of hope and renewal. It reminds us that justice is not simply a convention, but an objective standard, that beauty is not only subjective, but an expression of harmonious truth, that wisdom transcends information, existing as a guiding principle. Plato's metaphysics thus elevates philosophy from mere speculation to a profound art of living. By training our minds to contemplate the realm of ideas, we affirm the worth of intellectual and moral excellence. We learn to perceive the extraordinary in the ordinary, the eternal in the fleeting, and the divine in the human. Plato's vision challenges us to become philosophers in our own right, cultivating insight and virtue in pursuit of a world worthy of our highest ideals. Chapter 6: The Search for Justice, Building a Moral Society. Justice for Plato is not merely an individual virtue, but the very foundation of a well-ordered society. His exploration of justice, most famously articulated in The Republic, remains one of philosophy's most enduring and influential inquiries. Plato sought to answer fundamental questions. What is justice? How can it be realized? Why does it matter? In Plato's vision, justice exists on two levels, the personal and the societal. At the personal level, justice is the harmonious ordering of the soul, wherein reason governs spirit and appetite. The just individual exercises self-mastery, acting in accordance with rational principles rather than impulse or desire. This internal order is mirrored in the ideal society, where each class, rulers, guardians, and producers fulfills its proper function, and leadership is entrusted to those most capable of discerning the common good. Plato's conception of justice stands in marked contrast to the relativistic and utilitarian approaches prevalent in his day and ours. Rather than interpreting justice as mere advantage to the strong or utility to the majority, Plato insists on an objective standard rooted in goodness. Justice, as he defines it, is not only fair distribution, but the alignment of each part in service to the harmonious whole. The Republic explores these themes through extended dialogue, challenging conventional wisdom and probing the foundations of political and ethical life. Plato's ideal society is hierarchical but meritocratic. It requires education, discipline, and the aspiration to wisdom. Justice in this context is inseparable from the cultivation of virtue and the subordination of private interest to the public welfare. For contemporary audiences, Plato's model of justice holds distinctive relevance. The struggle to create moral societies marked by equality, respect, and fair governance remains perennial. Plato's insight is that true justice cannot be imposed by law alone, but must be fostered within the hearts and minds of citizens. Education, ethical cultivation, and wise leadership are crucial to sustaining just societies. However, the search for justice is fraught with difficulty. Plato recognizes the obstacles posed by ignorance, selfishness, and discord. His dialogues remind us that justice is not a static achievement, but an ongoing process of negotiation, reflection, and adaptation. The just society must continually interrogate its norms, reform its institutions, and inspire its members to pursue what is noble and right. Plato's vision challenges us to expand our conception of justice, to embrace not only procedural fairness, but substantive goodness. It invites us to consider the moral purposes of laws, the responsibilities of citizenship, and the integrity of leadership. By reflecting on Plato's analysis, we gain tools for critical evaluation, ethical reasoning, and the building of communities grounded in principle. To think like Plato is to make justice the guiding aim of personal and collective life. It is to seek balance, order, and purpose, refusing the temptations of expedience and power for their own sake. In aspiring to justice, we aspire to the best within ourselves and within humanity, a mission that is both ancient in origin and eternally new. Chapter 7. The Ideal State, Wisdom as the Foundation of Leadership. In the annals of human thought, few constructs have proven as enduring or as alluring as Plato's vision of the ideal state. Written amidst the turbulence of Athenian democracy and oligarchy, Plato's Republic envisions a polity in which justice, order, and harmony reign, each rooted in the cardinal virtue of wisdom. For Plato, leadership is not a mere exercise of authority. It is the sacred obligation to guide, nurture, and elevate the souls of the citizenry. His conception departs radically from systems governed by wealth, birthright, or popular acclaim. Instead, Plato insists that those at the helm must possess a profound love of truth, an unwavering commitment to justice, and the capacity for rational deliberation. At the heart of his ideal state lies the tripartite theory of the soul, mirrored in social structure. Plato divides society into three classes: the producers, artisans, farmers, merchants; the auxiliaries, warriors or defenders; and the rulers, philosopher kings. This division is no arbitrary stratification, but a reflection of differentiated virtues. Producers embody temperance, auxiliaries possess courage, and rulers must be paragons of wisdom. Plato identifies wisdom as the unique and essential quality separating rulers from the ruled. It is not mere cleverness or technical expertise. It is the capacity to discern the good, to contemplate eternal forms beyond the shadows of opinion and desire. The wise ruler acts not for personal benefit, but in harmonious alignment with truth and justice, creating laws, institutions, and culture that foster the flourishing of all citizens. To ensure the ascendancy of wisdom, Plato designs an elaborate educational system. Only through decades of rigorous philosophical inquiry, dialectical method, and ethical discipline can one hope to attain the clarity, impartiality, and self-mastery requisite for leadership. The curriculum encompasses mathematics, dialectics, gymnastics, and above all, philosophy. Those who excel advance, those who falter serve in other capacities. In this ideal polity, leadership is not a position assumed, but a vocation earned. No one rules by inheritance, wealth, or popularity alone. The path to governance is marked by introspection, personal transformation, and an ascetic commitment to virtue. It is the governance of the wise, not the cunning, who uplift society. Plato's state offers a stark contrast to the political realities of his time, and arguably of our own. Modern societies too often elevate leaders based on charisma, material success, or demagogic appeal. Plato's model challenges such tendencies, reminding us that true stewardship requires a foundation in wisdom, the capacity to perceive what is good not only for oneself, but for the community entire. Moreover, the ideal state provides a lens through which to analyze contemporary crises. Corruption, partisanship, and short-termism, these maladies stem from the absence of wisdom at the helm. Plato's remedy is radical. Invest in education, foster self-examination, and select leaders not for popularity, but for demonstrated virtue and rational insight. What, then, is the practical legacy of Plato's ideal state for the modern reader? It is, fundamentally, a clarion call to elevate the standards by which we choose our leaders and by which we govern ourselves. Wisdom, achieved through patient effort and philosophical reflection, must be the lighthouse guiding the ship of state. In the microcosm of individual lives, Plato's vision invites us to embrace leadership as service, not domination. Whether one leads a nation, a community, a family, or oneself, the precedent is clear. Let wisdom inform every decision, let virtue shape every aspiration, and let the pursuit of the common good supplant self-interest. In summation, the ideal state stands as both blueprint and beacon. Plato's insistence on wisdom as the foundation of leadership is neither utopian idealism nor nostalgic longing. It is a living principle, ever urgent and ever vital. As we strive to resolve the dilemmas of our own societies and selves, may we remember the imperative of Plato, to lead with wisdom and to build states and lives worthy of the human soul. Chapter 8. The Philosopher King, ruling with reason and virtue. In Plato's grand architecture of governance, none holds more consequence than the figure of the Philosopher King. Rendered in the Republic as the epitome of enlightened sovereignty, the Philosopher King is neither a mere monarch nor technocrat, but the living fusion of reason and virtue. Here Plato advances an audacious thesis. The ideal ruler must be a lover of wisdom, trained by years of philosophical inquiry and possessing the rare ability to subordinate personal impulses to the dictates of reason. Plato's suspicion of ordinary politics is well documented. Observing the excesses and incompetence of Athenian democracy, he harbors little faith in the ability of untrained masses or hereditary oligarchs to discern and realize the good. Instead, he proposes a radical alternative: raise a class of citizens who pursue truth relentlessly, who cultivate the virtues not as adornments, but as habits of being, and who are equipped to rule not by accident of birth, but by the achievement of personal excellence. The Philosopher King emerges from Plato's educational labyrinth, a course spanning mathematics, dialectics, music, physical training, and crucially, the study of forms. These forms, according to Plato, are eternal and perfect realities that undergird the shifting world of appearances. The Philosopher King alone, through patient ascent, apprehends the form of the good, thus becoming able to act not in service of fleeting pleasures or public opinion, but in accordance with unchanging truth. Reason is central to this ideal. The philosopher king must demonstrate an unerring capacity for rational analysis, ethical judgment, and the identification of the common good. This ruler is not swayed by the passions of the crowd, nor by the lure of personal gain. Instead, his soul is ordered. Reason alone governs, spirit defends, and desire obeys. Virtue, for Plato, is the indispensable counterpart to reason. Wisdom without virtue is cunning. Virtue without wisdom is mere innocence. The philosopher king harmonizes the cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. By doing so, he becomes both model and master of ethical rule. The process of selecting and training philosopher kings is rigorous and exclusive. Plato envisions guardians who are tested continually, not only for intellectual prowess, but for character, resilience, and capacity for self-sacrifice. Only those who withstand the temptations of corruption, the seductions of power, and the perils of isolation are deemed fit to govern. Such a vision stands in sharp relief against the landscape of contemporary governance. Today's leaders, often propelled by public relations campaigns rather than moral and intellectual achievement, are seldom tested by the crucibles envisioned by Plato. The decline of philosophical education and the marginalization of virtue in politics threaten the fabric of society, undermining legitimacy and eroding trust. Plato's philosopher king offers one remedy: return to the cultivation of reason and virtue as prerequisites for leadership. For individuals, this means the continual refinement of judgment, not only in political realms, but in the stewardship of families, communities, and enterprises. Reason must temper ambition. Virtue must guide action. Furthermore, Plato's ideal underscores the dangers of unchecked impulse, partisan loyalty, and thoughtless tradition. The philosopher king seeks out difficult truths, challenges ingrained beliefs, and adapts policies to changing circumstances, all while anchored in immutable principles. He does not rule by force, but by persuasion, not by decree, but by dialogue. Yet Plato is not naive. He acknowledges that the ascent to philosophical kingship is arduous and rare. Societies that do not invest in education, that do not reward moral and intellectual excellence, are doomed to be ruled by inferior men, those who pursue pleasure, profit, or power divorced from wisdom. What then may the modern reader glean from this ideal? First, the primacy of lifelong learning. The path of the philosopher king calls on each of us to embrace inquiry, humility, and open-mindedness. Second, the imperative of ethical integrity. Wisdom without virtue corrodes. Virtue without wisdom stagnates. Only their union can produce effective leadership. Third, and most urgently, Plato's ideal challenges societies to reimagine their criteria for leadership. Popularity and wealth cannot substitute for reason and virtue. Only by choosing and cultivating leaders who embody both can we hope to escape the cycles of discord and decline. The philosopher king, then, is as much a personal aspiration as a political principle. In our own spheres, we may embody this ideal by practicing reflexive self-examination, rigorous critical thought, and courageous commitment to the good. In doing so, we not only honor Plato's legacy, but also contribute to the construction of societies ordered by reason and justice. To rule or to live with reason and virtue is the challenge Plato offers to every age. May we accept his invitation and strive to be philosopher kings in word and deed. Chapter 9. The Balance of Soul. Harmony between reason, spirit, and desire. Among Plato's most lasting contributions to philosophy is his theory of the soul's structure. Introduced in both the Republic and the Phaedrus, it offers profound insight into the mechanics of human motivation, emotion, and virtue. Plato conceives the soul as tripartite: reason, logistikon, spirit, timoides, and desire, epithematikon. Each part, while distinct, must work in concert if the individual is to attain harmony, flourishing, and moral clarity. Reason occupies the seat of the driver, tasked with discerning truth and charting the course of life. It is the faculty by which we think, reflect, judge, and direct our actions towards higher purposes. Unchecked, however, reason can become cold, rigid, or detached, a tyrant that ignores the passions that animate and energize life. Spirit, placed at the heart of the soul, is the wellspring of courage, resilience, and ambition. It is the force that propels us to stake out our convictions, defend our dignity, and pursue noble ends. Yet spirit alone may lead to recklessness, pride, or aggression if not subordinated to reason's guidance. Desire, the appetitive part, craves pleasure, comfort, and satisfaction. It houses the manifold urges for food, sex, power, and recognition. When governed, desire becomes a loyal servant, channeling energy into productive pursuits. Uncontrolled, however, it breeds chaos, addiction, and the dissolution of character. In Plato's schema, the well-ordered soul mirrors the well-ordered state. Reason must rule, spirit must defend reason's judgments, and desire must submit to lawful pleasure. The analogy to society is precise. Just as philosopher kings govern auxiliaries and producers, reason governs spirit and desire. Achieving this internal harmony demands continual effort. Plato advocates philosophical reflection as the principal means to train reason, ethical discipline to shape spirit, and temperance to moderate desire. Through dialogue, dialectic, and education, each soul can become attuned to its proper mode of being. Conflict between these parts is inevitable. Indeed, Plato recognizes the danger of psychic civil war. The man who permits desire to rule becomes enslaved to pleasure, losing sight of reason's mandates and spirit's courage. The individual dominated by spirit alone becomes contentious and domineering. Only by harmonizing these elements can one attain eudaimonia, a state of flourishing, happiness, and equilibrium. Plato's metaphor of the charioteer in the Phaedrus is illustrative. Reason, the charioteer, struggles to control two horses. The noble horse, spirit, supports the charioteer's commands. The unruly horse, desire, threatens to veer off course. The challenge is eternal, requiring vigilance, self-examination, and the cultivation of the virtues. In the modern context, Plato's psychology offers a powerful diagnostic tool. Many of our personal and societal maladies stem from the disintegration of the soul's harmony. Addiction, impulsivity, anxiety, and aggression. These are the symptoms of a soul at war with itself. Plato's remedy is twofold. Identify the sources of discord and undertake the lifelong project of integration. Education plays a central role. By fostering intellectual curiosity, ethical reasoning, and emotional resilience, individuals can reinforce reason, cultivate spirit, and moderate desire. Philosophy is not a luxury, but a necessity. Without it, one risks drifting aimlessly, pulled by every passing whim or passion. Contemporary psychological research echoes Plato's insights. The human mind is indeed multifaceted. Subconscious desires, emotional drives, and rational calculation vie for dominance. Modern therapies, CBT, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, owe much to Plato's blueprint, seeking to harmonize thought, feeling, and impulse. The path to balance, however, is neither linear nor easy. Plato does not promise unbroken serenity. Rather, he bids us accept the perennial struggle and to choose, again and again, the discipline of reflection, the courage of spirit, and the moderation of desire. Beyond the individual, Plato's tripartite model extends to organizations and societies. Corporate cultures marked by unchecked desire, profit at any cost, breed corruption and instability. Societies dominated by spirit, militarism, nationalism, risk perpetual conflict. Only where reason sets the agenda do societies thrive, advancing justice, creativity, and peace. For the reader, Plato's theory is both a challenge and a consolation. It affirms that human nature is complex, mutable, and capable of transformation. The work of harmony is unending, but its rewards are immense. Wisdom, self-mastery, dignity, and joy. Let each soul, then, become a microcosm of the ideal state. Let reason rule, spirit defend, and desire serve. Let the search for balance become the measure of a life well lived, and let Plato's ancient lesson guide modern minds towards wholeness. Chapter 10. The Education of the Mind, the Role of Philosophy in Growth. For Plato, education, paideia, is the architectonic force shaping both individuals and societies. More than the transmission of facts or techniques, education is the cultivation of the soul's deepest capacities: reason, virtue, the love of truth. In his dialogues, especially the Republic and Meno, Plato articulates a vision of education not as rote learning, but as an ascent, a journey from ignorance to understanding, from opinion to knowledge. Plato's educational ideal arises from his theory of the forms. The visible world, he argues, is but a shadow cast by invisible eternal realities. To grasp these realities, the forms of justice, beauty, goodness, requires more than sensory experience. It demands the exercise of reason through dialectic and philosophical reflection. Education, therefore, is not passive absorption, but active inquiry. Plato conceives the highest form of learning as the dialectical method: rigorous questioning, critical scrutiny, and the relentless pursuit of logic. In the Socratic method, the student is never allowed to rest in easy answers. He must challenge assumptions, interrogate beliefs, and refine arguments until only the gold of truth remains. The journey is arduous. Plato likens education to emerging from a cave, shedding the chains of ignorance, and gradually accustoming the eyes to the light of reality. This allegory of the cave stands as a metaphor for human development, the passage from the comfort of familiar illusions into the demanding clarity of knowledge. Philosophy occupies the summit of education. For Plato, it is not a specialty for the elite, but the essential vocation of every rational being. Philosophy trains the soul to discern the difference between appearance and reality, between prejudice and principle. It demands humility, courage, and patience, the virtues necessary to withstand the difficulty and ambiguity intrinsic to real learning. The role of education extends beyond personal growth. It is the foundation of a just society. Plato's never-ending emphasis on the moral dimension of schooling is clear. By educating citizens in reason and virtue, one constructs a polity capable of wise governance, lawful conduct, and harmonious living. Absent such education, societies descend into chaos, selfishness, and tyranny. In his scheme, the curriculum is rigorous and holistic. Physical training, music, mathematics, and logic all serve to discipline body and mind. Only those who excel are permitted to advance to the study of philosophy, culminating in the highest knowledge, the contemplation of the good. Education, then, is not a tool for economic gain, but an existential project, a formation of identity, character, and purpose. Plato's model rebuffs the instrumental view of learning common in the modern era. Knowledge, for him, is its own reward. It is the path by which the soul grows, matures, and fulfills its nature. Contemporary educational theory echoes and departs from Plato's vision. While specialization and technical prowess have blossomed, the decline of philosophical training threatens both intellectual rigor and ethical maturity. The separation of knowledge from virtue, skill from wisdom, has produced societies rich in information but poor in judgment. Plato's lesson is urgent: reunite knowledge with virtue. Restore philosophy to the heart of education. In the era of misinformation and digital distraction, the capacity to think critically, to reason ethically, and to inquire patiently is more valuable than any technical skill. For the individual, education is a lifelong commitment. Plato insists that learning does not end in youth. The ascent to truth continues through every stage of life. The educated person is therefore not the one who knows facts, but the one who loves truth, who seeks understanding, and whose soul is shaped by integrity. Moreover, Plato's perspective offers a remedy to the crisis of meaning afflicting contemporary minds. By linking education to personal growth, intellectual discovery to moral formation, philosophy provides an anchor in a world dominated by flux and uncertainty. In practical terms, Plato's educational philosophy calls each reader to cultivate the disciplines of intellectual curiosity, self-reflection, and virtue. Seek teachers who challenge and inspire. Engage in dialogue that sharpens understanding. Read not merely for information, but for transformation. Plato's ancient lesson endures. Education is the ladder by which the soul ascends from darkness to light. Let philosophy be the guide, and let each mind grow toward its highest possibility. Chapter 11. The Art of Self-Examination, Knowing Thyself. In the sacred precincts of Delphi, inscribed above the temple entrance, stood a simple yet enigmatic command: know thyself. Plato adopted this Delphic maxim as a touchstone for philosophical inquiry, interpreting self-examination not as narcissistic introspection, but as the pursuit of the soul's deepest truths. For him, philosophy began with the courage to confront one's own ignorance, prejudices, and contradictions, a process both unsettling and ultimately liberating. The Platonic tradition teaches us that self-knowledge is foundational for all other forms of wisdom. And like the mere accumulation of facts, self-examination requires a relentless honesty and a willingness to peel away illusions. Plato's dialogues present the philosopher in constant interrogation, whether through Socratic questioning or dialectical engagement. In the Apology, Socrates famously declares that the unexamined life is not worth living, a contemplation born, challenge that reverberates in every age. To embark upon the journey of self-examination is first to recognize the layered complexity of the human psyche. Plato conceived the soul as divided, a tripartite harmony between reason, spirit, and appetite. The rational part seeks wisdom, the spirited part pursues honor and courage, while the appetitive part desires physical pleasure and satisfaction. The art of self-examination, therefore, entails discerning these elements within oneself, observing their interactions, and striving for balance. Modern psychology echoes these ancient insights, affirming that self-reflection fosters resilience, adaptability, and moral clarity. Yet the Platonic approach demands more than self-awareness. It calls for the cultivation of virtues. Courage, temperance, and justice are not passive attributes, but active choices shaped through the scrutiny of motives and actions. In this sense, knowing oneself is inseparable from becoming oneself, a continual process of refinement and actualization. Plato's Allegory of the cave presents a powerful metaphor for self-examination. Those bound within the cave see only shadows, mistaking projections for reality. Only through introspective effort, the philosophical ascent, can one turn toward the light and apprehend truth. Plato challenges us to examine the sources of our beliefs. Are they inherited prejudices, untested opinions, or reasoned convictions? This interrogation precedes any quest for external understanding, for without self-knowledge, all other inquiries are built on sand. Practically, self-examination can take many forms. Meditation, journaling, dialoguing with trusted confidants, and studying philosophical texts all serve as mirrors for the inner life. Plato's dialogues themselves are intended to provoke reflection. They do not spoon-feed answers, but rather invite the reader into the dialectic, forging understanding through questioning and dialogue. In an age of distractions and superficiality, Plato's lesson endures with undiminished urgency. Social media, instant messaging, and curated online personas can lure us away from genuine understanding, offering simulacra in place of substance. To know oneself is to resist the tyranny of self-deception, to probe beneath appearances, and to navigate the labyrinth of motives, biases, and fears. It is to stand alone, courageously, before the tribunal of one's own conscience, a solitary yet universal pilgrimage. Ultimately, the art of self-examination is not an end, but a beginning, the door through which we pass into deeper inquiry, more authentic relationships, and higher levels of wisdom. Plato assures us that the pursuit is arduous, but the rewards are profound. By knowing ourselves, we gain the perspective required to engage meaningfully with the world, and we attune our lives to the highest ideals of reason, virtue, and truth. Chapter 12, Love and Beauty, the Ascent toward the Divine. Plato's philosophy is permeated by a profound reverence for beauty and love, a realm where the limitations of the mundane world may be transcended in pursuit of the divine. In the Symposium, one of his most celebrated dialogues, Plato depicts love, eros, not merely as physical attraction, but as a ladder of ascent, guiding the soul from base desires toward the contemplation of pure, eternal beauty. Each rung of the ladder signifies a stage in the soul's development. The journey begins with the attraction toward individual bodies, a passion ignited by sensual allure. Yet Plato insists this is but the lowest form of love, a necessary starting point but never a destination. The true lover, inspired by philosophical reflection, advances from particular forms to an appreciation of beauty itself, an immutable, perfect ideal existing independently of transient manifestations. Plato's conception of beauty transcends aesthetics. It becomes a moral force, a vector for self-transcendence. The philosopher-lover seeks to align his or her soul with the good, thereby attaining harmony and fulfillment. In this sense, love becomes a vehicle for virtue, compelling the individual to rise above selfish pleasure and cultivate wisdom. Through loving rightly, the soul learns to love wisely. The Phaedrus further elaborates on this ascent, portraying the lover as a charioteer guiding the twin horses of passion and reason. Here, the mythological imagery encapsulates the internal struggle to harmonize desire with rational aspiration. Plato suggests that the pursuit of beauty, if properly ordered, leads the soul to remember its divine origin, to recollect the forms glimpsed before birth, when it partook of the highest realities. In modern times, love and beauty are often commodified, reduced to fleeting experiences or objects of consumption. Plato's insights challenge us to recover the sacred dimension of human relationships, to approach romance, friendship, and even artistic appreciation as sacred quests. The ascent toward the divine remains relevant for those who seek depth over immediacy and meaning over mere sensation. This Platonic vision also invites a re-evaluation of the role of art and poetry. Far from mere entertainment, art becomes the intermediary between matter and spirit, capable of revealing glimpses of the ideal. When encountered with discernment, beautiful works elevate the soul, inspiring reverence and awe. Furthermore, Plato does not ignore the pitfalls of love. He is acutely aware of its power to deceive and corrupt. Misguided passion, untethered from reason, can enslave the soul, leading to obsession, jealousy, and folly. The ascent outlined in the Symposium is therefore both a challenge and a caution. Love must be refined, educated, and oriented toward wisdom. Within the Platonic system, then, love is a mystery and a discipline. It calls us to see beyond surfaces, to seek unity amid multiplicity, and to aspire toward the eternal. This path unfolds not in isolation, but in relationship, dialogue with others, commitment to ideals, and tender appreciation of the world's fleeting beauties. Each moment of genuine love, each encounter with beauty, becomes a stepping stone in the soul's pilgrimage. In embracing Plato's vision, modern readers are invited not merely to admire or possess, but to participate, to be transformed through the pursuit of a love that educates, elevates, and liberates. The ascent toward the divine is not a denial of the world, but its fulfillment. Beauty seen, love cherished, and the soul awakened to its truest self. Chapter 13. The Teacher and the Student. Lessons from Socrates. The relationship between teacher and student lies at the heart of Platonic philosophy, embodied most vividly in the figure of Socrates, the probing questioner, gadfly, and uncompromising guide. Plato's conversations with Socrates represent not just the transmission of knowledge, but the cultivation of wisdom, a dynamic interplay demanding courage, humility, and openness. Socratic pedagogy is rooted in dialogue, a process that eschews dictation in favor of inquiry. Socrates does not instruct by handing down definitive answers. Instead, he exposes assumptions, awakens critical faculties, and compels his interlocutors to think for themselves. This method, immortalized in the Apology, Meno, and Republic, remains the benchmark for genuine education. It fosters independence of mind and a spirit of perpetual questioning. Plato himself underwent this transformative apprenticeship. In dialogues such as the Phaedo, Euthyphro, and Crito, Socrates leads his students through the thickets of argument, ever challenging complacency. The lesson is clear. Philosophy is not a static body of doctrine, but an activity, a way of engaging with the world and others. To be a student is not merely to receive information, but to risk discomfort and doubt. To be willing to unlearn as much as learn. The student's journey often begins with confusion, a beneficial state, according to Socrates, for it signals the recognition of ignorance. Rather than concealing uncertainty, the philosopher makes it the launching pad for investigation. In Plato's dialogues, error becomes opportunity. Mistaken beliefs are not condemned but examined, turning each failure into illumination. Central to this relationship is the notion of maieutic, the midwifery of ideas. Socrates likens his method to helping his students give birth to insights that reside within them. The teacher, then, is not a master, but a facilitator of growth. Knowledge, in the Platonic sense, cannot simply be transferred. It must be awakened. Modern education has much to glean from this ancient model. In an era often dominated by standardized testing and rote memorization, the Socratic approach offers an antidote, emphasizing dialogue, constructive challenge, and the cultivation of virtues such as patience and humility. Plato's depiction of Socrates suggests that the highest aim of teaching is to draw forth potential and inspire excellence. Moreover, the relationship between teacher and student is reciprocal. In the Symposium, for example, we find not only teaching but mutual learning, the flow of ideas enriching both parties. Plato's academy emerges as a community of seekers bound by shared inquiry, where hierarchy dissolves in the face of truth's demands. Yet the Socratic method is not without its dangers. Questioning can unsettle, provoke resistance, and even, as history attests, lead to alienation or persecution. Socrates himself paid the ultimate price, condemned for corrupting the youth of Athens. Plato subtly reminds us that the pursuit of wisdom may be misunderstood, even feared, in societies resistant to change. In the modern context, the teacher-student dynamic is crucial for revitalizing democracy. Ethical reasoning and cultural understanding, dialogue, interrogation, and humility are safeguards against dogmatism, tools for nurturing thoughtful citizens rather than passive consumers of information. In summary, Plato's lesson is profound. Education is not about molding conformity, but igniting freedom. The best teacher does not instruct what to think, but how to think, inspiring the courage to wander the uncharted domains of knowledge and the humility to remain ever a student. In the echo of Socratic questions, we hear the enduring promise of philosophy to liberate minds, refine hearts, and advance the human quest for understanding. Chapter 14, The Shadows of Society. Why People Resist Truth. Plato's Allegory of the Cave stands as one of the most evocative images in all philosophy, a narrative portrait of humanity's resistance to truth and the obstacles that undermine the pursuit of wisdom. In this tale, prisoners are chained within a subterranean cavern, able to see only shadows projected on a wall, mistaking these silhouettes for the sum of reality. This metaphor reveals the psychological and social forces that conspire to sustain ignorance. The shadows represent prevailing myths, platitudes, and conventions, the accepted beliefs that provide comfort and coherence but often distort or conceal deeper realities. Plato highlights a perennial challenge: the reluctance of individuals and societies to face uncomfortable truths, preferring illusion and habit to uncertainty and transformation. The prisoners in the cave are not evil. Rather, they are human. Fear, inertia, and attachment bind them to the familiar. Plato argues that enlightenment, emergence into the light of truth, requires both intellectual and moral courage. The journey upward is painful, involving the disintegration of old certainties and exposure to new, dazzling realities. In the Allegory, the liberated prisoner initially resists the sunlight, overwhelmed by unfamiliar brilliance, a poignant commentary on the difficulty of adjusting to higher forms of knowledge. Resistance to truth persists not only at the individual, but the collective level. Social norms, traditions, and institutions may perpetuate falsehoods, defending the status quo against inquiry and dissent. Plato's dialogue emphasizes the complicity of the group. Those who remain in the cave may ridicule, ostracize, or even threaten those who escape, evidencing the danger faced by truth-tellers. Modern parallels abound. The information age, while granting unprecedented access to data, also enables the proliferation of echo chambers, propaganda, and confirmation bias. Plato's cave is no mere artifact of ancient Athens. It thrives in the algorithms of social media, the curation of news, and the polarization of discourse. The resistance to truth is amplified by incentives to conform and the anxieties provoked by uncertainty. Plato's analysis transcends mere diagnosis. It offers a prescription. First, the philosopher must cultivate a spirit of question-asking, refusing complacency and pressing beyond appearances. Second, the intellectual ascent requires community, a circle of fellow seekers who encourage and challenge. The solitary pursuit of truth is noble, but ultimately precarious. The philosopher needs allies, just as the cave's escapee benefits from guidance. Third, Plato anticipates the backlash that may await those who return to the cave bearing knowledge. The truth, once discovered, imposes an ethical obligation to enlighten, persuade, and risk opposition for the sake of the common good. This social dimension of philosophy underscores the importance of dialogue, education, and the protection of dissenting voices. The Allegory also invites reflection on personal obstacles to truth. Cognitive dissonance, pride, and fear of rejection are formidable barriers. To overcome them is to cultivate humility, openness, and the willingness to be transformed. Plato assures us that enlightenment is not an achievement, but a process, an ongoing commitment to clarity, honesty, and self-correction. In conclusion, the shadows of society are not simply out there. They inhabit our own minds and relationships. By confronting and dispelling illusion, Plato teaches us to embrace the discomfort of questioning, the discipline of reason, and the audacity of hope. The resistance to truth may be universal, but so too is the possibility of awakening. Philosophy is the lamp that guides the prisoner toward the sunlight, revealing not just what is, but what might be. Chapter 15. The Ethics of Wisdom. Living with integrity and purpose. For Plato, ethics is inseparable from wisdom, a lived realization of truth manifest in character and conduct. The pursuit of the good, in Platonic thought, is not an abstract exercise but a concrete imperative, demanding that individuals align their lives with the highest ideals of reason, justice, and integrity. At the core of Platonic ethics lies the concept of virtue, arete, understood as excellence in thought, emotion, and action. Plato's cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, are not isolated attributes, but interrelated dimensions of a well-ordered soul. The philosopher seeks not only to know what is right, but to become right, forging unity between understanding and being. In the Republic, Plato constructs his ideal society as a reflection of the just individual. Each person, like each class in the city, must perform their proper function harmoniously, guided by reason. Justice, then, is more than legalistic fairness. It is the flourishing of the whole, the integration of personal and communal well-being. The ethical life is one marked by balance, purpose, and attention to the greater good. Living with integrity for Plato demands both inner and outer discipline. The soul must resist the seductions of impulse and habit, subordinating desire to rational deliberation. This does not entail repression, but ordering. Appetites and ambitions are transformed through education and self-mastery. Plato's Socrates models this approach, choosing principle over expediency even at the cost of his life. Purpose animates this ethical vision. Each person is endowed with a distinctive nature and calling to be discovered through self-examination and cultivated through action. The philosopher is not content with drifting. He or she seeks direction, meaning, and fulfillment in pursuit of the good. Plato critiques the distractions of wealth, fame, and pleasure, arguing that true happiness resides in the harmony of soul and the service of truth. Ethical living, however, is not solitary. Plato affirms the importance of friendship, community, and civic engagement as crucibles for virtue. The practice of justice demands engagement with others, the negotiation of conflicting interests, and the willingness to sacrifice for higher ends. Philosophy is as much social as it is personal, a way of participating in the common life. Contemporary challenges, corruption, polarization, erosion of trust, underscore the urgency of Platonic ethics. The cultivation of wisdom is the antidote to cynicism and despair, enabling individuals and societies to resist injustice and forge paths toward reconciliation and mutual respect. Practically, ethics begins with small choices: honesty in speech, fairness in judgment, courage in adversity, and generosity in relationships. Plato insists that each moment offers opportunity for the exercise of virtue, a chance to translate aspiration into action. In so doing, we not only transform ourselves, but set an example, inviting others into the pursuit of the good. Plato does not promise that the ethical life will be easy or rewarded. The philosopher's path is often lonely, misunderstood, or scorned. Yet the commitment to integrity and purpose yields a happiness untainted by circumstance, a joy born of fidelity to one's values and ideals. In sum, the ethics of wisdom is a discipline of living. It requires vigilance, humility, and perseverance. It demands constant recalibration and reflection. Plato's vision invites us to orient ourselves toward the highest goods, to shape our character in accordance with the truth, and to act in ways that reflect our deepest convictions. Here, in the integration of reason, virtue, and purpose, human flourishing is found, a beacon for those who would live not only wisely but well. Chapter 16, The Power of Thought, Creating Reality Through Reason. In Plato's philosophical universe, thought is not merely a passive observer of reality, it is its very creator, shaping and distilling the essence of truth from the shifting appearances of the day. The notion that reason is a generative force rather than a bystander is fundamental to understanding Platonic thought. This chapter seeks to unravel how Plato understood the power of thought, its capacity to forge reality, and the profound implications this has for individuals and societies alike. Plato's Allegory of the Cave, found in his magnum opus, The Republic, is perhaps the most vivid illustration of the transformative power of thought. Here, prisoners are chained in darkness, seeing only shadows projected on a wall. Their reality is limited to these illusions until one escapes into the light, discovering a world more authentic and vibrant than anything previously imagined. This journey is emblematic of the philosophical ascent, from ignorance to knowledge, from belief to understanding. Plato posits that it is not external circumstances, but the cultivation of reason that liberates us from the shackles of illusion. For Plato, the mind is a craftsman, sculpting the forms that structure reality. He was convinced that only through systematic inquiry and rational discourse could one attain the immutable truths, the forms, that underpin the flux of the physical world. The form of the good, in particular, stands as the ultimate principle, enlightening all that is knowable and all that is valuable. In contemporary terms, Plato reminds us that thought shapes action, perception, and even the boundaries of possibility. How does this ancient insight translate to modern experience? In today's world, we are besieged with data, information, and competing narratives. The proliferation of social media, news cycles, and virtual realities has rendered the line between truth and appearance increasingly tenuous. Plato's message that the disciplined exercise of reason is the foundation of authentic reality offers a remedy to this epistemic crisis. By cultivating philosophical habits, questioning, analyzing, and seeking coherence, we are better equipped to discern truth from falsehood, substance from spectacle. Moreover, the power of thought is not isolated to the purely intellectual realm. For Plato, reason and character are intertwined. Rational reflection guides ethical action. To think well is to live well. The philosophical life, far from a detached pursuit, is an active engagement with the world, demanding integrity, courage, and the humility to revise one's beliefs in light of evidence and argument. The Platonic tradition, passed down through the centuries, has inspired countless thinkers to wield thought as a creative force. From the scientific revolutions of the Enlightenment to the technological innovations of the digital age, the legacy of Platonic reason endures. To think like Plato is to recognize that reality, in all its complexity, is shaped by the ideas we hold, the questions we ask, and the principles we commit to. In the chapters that follow, this insight will serve as a touchstone, reminding us that philosophy is not a relic of the past, but a living practice, forging the world anew through the power of thought. Chapter 17, The Limits of Knowledge, Embracing Mystery and Wonder. Plato's engagement with the limits of knowledge is at once profound and paradoxical. While he championed the search for timeless truths, he was acutely aware of the boundaries that circumscribe human understanding. In this chapter, we delve into Plato's recognition of epistemic limits, his embrace of wonder as the beginning of philosophy, and how acknowledging ignorance paves the way for deeper wisdom. At the heart of Platonic philosophy lies the acknowledgement that knowledge, while noble, is never complete. In dialogues such as Meno and Phaedrus, Plato famously draws attention to the Socratic paradox: "I know that I know nothing." This statement, far from an admission of defeat, is an invitation to inquiry, a radical humility that opens the door to perpetual questioning and intellectual growth. It is the spark that ignites wonder, the sense of awe that motivates philosophical investigation. Plato's metaphysics distinguishes between the world of forms, perfect, immutable and true, and the world of sensory experience, which is mutable, fleeting, and often deceptive. While reason enables ascent to the realm of forms, Plato contends that our embodied existence necessarily limits our grasp of ultimate reality. The pursuit of knowledge thus becomes a journey, not toward absolute certainty, but toward ever greater clarity and depth. This journey begins and ends in wonder, a virtue Plato considered essential for both philosophers and citizens. In the modern context, the limits of knowledge are acutely felt. Scientific advancements have expanded the boundaries of the known universe, yet have simultaneously multiplied the mysteries that remain unsolved. Quantum physics, neuroscience, and cosmology testify to realms where certainty dissolves into probability and where answers give rise to deeper questions. In this landscape, Plato's insistence on epistemic humility is more relevant than ever. Philosophy for Plato is an exercise in awe, a disciplined wonder that resists the temptation of dogmatism. He teaches us to embrace uncertainty, not as a source of anxiety, but as a catalyst for creativity and imagination. To recognize the limits of one's knowledge is to become truly wise, for it is only from the vantage of acknowledged ignorance that growth becomes possible. Practically, this means fostering an intellectual culture that values humility over hubris, dialogue over monologue, and curiosity over complacency. In an age polarized by certainty and ideological rigidity, Plato's lesson is vital. The most potent questions are those that unsettle us, that invite us to see beyond our certainties, and to dwell in the mystery of the unknown. Plato's legacy is not one of finished edifices of thought, but of open temples, spaces where wonder and mystery are cherished. Through his dialogues, he invites each of us to become seekers, lovers of wisdom, who, through recognizing the limits of knowledge, find themselves perpetually drawn to the horizon of understanding. Chapter 18, From Athens to the World, Plato's Global Influence. Few thinkers have enjoyed the worldwide influence that Plato has achieved. Born in 428 BCE in Athens, his philosophical legacy has permeated cultures, institutions, and disciplines across centuries and continents. This chapter traces the journey of Plato's ideas from the city-state of Athens to the wider world, illuminating the enduring forces that have made his philosophy a global phenomenon. The foundations of Plato's influence were laid in the Academy, the first institution dedicated to philosophical inquiry in the Western tradition. Here, students gathered to debate the nature of reality, virtue, and governance. The Platonic model of education, dialogical, dialectical, and relentless in its pursuit of the good, became a template copied by countless educational systems. The Academy itself foreshadowed universities, whose spirit of inquiry persists to this day. Plato's dialogues, crafted with dramatic flair and intellectual tension, transcended the historical boundaries of Greece. His conceptions of justice, the ideal state, and the philosopher king inspired Roman statesmen, Christian theologians, Islamic philosophers, and Renaissance humanists. Figures such as St. Augustine, Al-Farabi, and Marsilio Ficino adapted Platonic metaphysics to their own religious and cultural contexts, weaving Plato's ideas into the fabric of diverse civilizations. In the modern era, Plato's influence expanded through the spread of classical education. His works became central texts in the curricula of Europe and the Americas, shaping the intellectual formation of generations. Political theorists turned to Plato to grapple with issues of democracy, authority, and individual freedom. Scientists and mathematicians drew on Platonic theories of ideal forms to analyze mathematical truths and physical laws. Artists and writers, enchanted by Platonic notions of beauty and transcendence, infused their works with his themes. The global impact of Plato is not merely academic. His ideas have penetrated the social and cultural spheres. In India, philosophers integrated Platonic dialectics with Vedantic traditions, fostering rich exchanges between East and West. In the Islamic Golden Age, thinkers such as Avicenna and Averroes harmonized Aristotelian and Platonic ideas, disseminating them through the Abbasid Caliphate. Plato thus became a bridge, uniting disparate cultures in the common quest for wisdom. Today, Plato's influence is evident in the language of justice, education, and the common good. He provides a vocabulary, a set of conceptual tools for addressing perennial issues. In the arenas of law, politics, and ethics, Plato serves repeatedly as both model and critic, challenging us to aspire beyond the limits of the present. The universality of Plato's philosophy lies in its adaptability. His ideas have proved robust enough to survive radical shifts in thought and circumstance, yet supple enough to enrich diverse traditions. As we navigate the challenges of globalization, a world marked by plurality and interconnection, Plato's teachings offer a foundation for dialogue, cooperation, and understanding. The ascent from Athens to the world has made Plato not merely a Greek philosopher, but a global sage, a master whose lessons belong to all humankind. Chapter 19, Relevance in the Digital Age, Plato and Modern Society. The accelerating march of technology has thrust humanity into a new era, where digital reality is shaping consciousness, relationships, and even moral decision-making. Plato, though separated from our era by millennia, offers perspectives strikingly pertinent to these contemporary questions. In this chapter, we explore how Platonic philosophy addresses the transformations of the digital age, guiding us through ethical dilemmas, cognitive challenges, and the quest for meaning in a world mediated by machines. To understand Plato's relevance today, we must first grasp his conviction that reality is not merely given, but constructed through reasoned inquiry. The digital age, marked by artificial intelligence, social media, and ubiquitous data, is a realm where appearances and realities can diverge dramatically. Plato's Allegory of the Cave, with its shadows and illusions, finds new resonance. Are our online experiences reflections of truth, or merely mediated representations designed to captivate, manipulate, and sometimes deceive? Digital technologies have amplified the spread of information, but they have also intensified the risk of misinformation and cognitive echo chambers. Plato's emphasis on dialectic, the disciplined exchange of ideas, serves as an antidote to polarization and intellectual fragmentation. In a world of instant communication, the virtues of careful reasoning, critical dialogue, and reflective judgment are more essential than ever. Perhaps most critically, Plato's ethical philosophy demands that we use technological power for the good. As algorithms increasingly shape social interactions and political discourse, the question arises: who decides what is just, true, and beautiful in the digital public square? Plato's notion of the philosopher king, the ideal ruler guided by wisdom rather than passion or profit, serves as a provocative ideal against the backdrop of technocratic governance and digital monopolies. His vision invites us to cultivate leaders whose decisions are shaped by knowledge, virtue, and an unwavering commitment to the common good. The digital age also presents new opportunities for self-knowledge and personal development. Plato argued that philosophy was not only a collective enterprise, but also a path to individual flourishing. With the advent of online education, virtual communities, and AI-powered learning, Platonic inquiry can reach wider audiences than ever before. The challenge, however, is to ensure that the pursuit of wisdom is not throttled by distractions, superficiality, or algorithmic determination. Finally, the tension between permanence and change, a central theme of Plato's metaphysics, mirrors the rapid evolution of digital technologies. The world of forms represents enduring value, while the material world is in flux. In today's society, this tension manifests in the struggle to anchor ethical standards and human dignity amid ceaseless innovation. Plato's philosophy provides not only a critique of the digital age, but a roadmap for navigating its complexities. By embracing reason, cultivating virtue, and fostering genuine dialogue, we can ensure that technology serves human flourishing rather than undermining it. In this way, Plato remains as relevant now as he was in ancient Athens, a guide for modern minds seeking wisdom in a world transformed. Chapter 20, The Philosopher's Legacy, Living the Life of the Mind. The ultimate measure of Plato's influence is not found in abstract doctrines, but in the living legacy of the philosophical life. Plato championed the cultivation of the mind as the highest calling, one requiring both intellectual rigor and moral discipline. In this chapter, we probe the contours of Plato's vision for a life governed by thought, examining how his legacy finds expression in contemporary pursuits, practices, and ideals. Plato's conception of the philosopher was radically active. The life of the mind, he argued, was not confined to seclusion or scholarly study, but was an engaged communal enterprise. Dialogues such as Symposium and Phaedrus depict philosophy as a vibrant, embodied activity, pursued through conversation, debate, and shared inquiry. For Plato, the goal was not to arrive at final answers, but to refine one's reasoning, cultivate virtue, and foster a sense of wonder. To live philosophically is, in Plato's terms, to seek the good in all things. This means interrogating assumptions, weighing evidence, and striving for justice, not only in the public sphere, but in the governance of one's own soul. Plato's theory of the tripartite soul, reason, spirit, and appetite, emphasizes the necessity of harmonizing these elements, allowing rational wisdom to guide action and passion. In the modern context, Plato's legacy is visible in the emphasis on lifelong learning, critical reflection, and civic engagement. The philosophical life calls for intellectual humility, a willingness to revise beliefs, learn from others, and embrace uncertainty. It also demands courage, the ability to stand by one's convictions in the face of adversity. Education, for Plato, was not merely a preparation for employment, but a process of moral and intellectual formation. The proliferation of philosophy departments, ethical think tanks, and public forums testifies to the continued relevance of Platonic ideals. The philosopher's legacy is not restricted to academia. It lives on in the practices of journalists, scientists, artists, and citizens who approach problems with imagination, rigor, and an abiding sense of responsibility. Plato's emphasis on dialogue remains a cornerstone of democratic societies, where deliberation and reasoned debate are essential to collective decision-making. The philosopher's legacy also includes a commitment to justice, an aspiration to render society fairer, more inclusive, and oriented toward the common good. Living the life of the mind, according to Plato, is not an escape from the world, but a way of engaging it more deeply. As the world changes, the need for thoughtful, ethically guided individuals becomes ever more pressing. Plato's legacy challenges each of us to become philosophers in our own right, thinkers who seek wisdom, embody virtue, and nurture curiosity. In embracing this legacy, we recognize that the philosophical life is a lifelong journey, a continual striving toward understanding, compassion, and excellence. In this way, Plato's teachings endure, not as static relics, but as living inspirations for all who aspire to the life of the mind. If you found this video helpful, inspiring, or entertaining, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Your support means the world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.